Hello, Internet. How is everyone this evening? Hope everybody's having a fantastic Sunday. We're doing something a little different this night. I am joined with my co-host, Eric Abbenante. Is it too soon to say that, Eric? Is it too soon?
No, I think that is what we're establishing. Yes, we just have. Yeah, exactly. Did we just become best friends? Yeah. We're just yeah, we haven't figured out a name yet. We've had a couple we've thrown around, so this is just a pilot episode, and we'll throw in a name later.
Scarlett doesn't know any different, so she has to say hi at the beginning of every episode. So she's not gonna. That's gonna have to be part of our routine anyway. She has to. She's We'll give her a job. Okay. All right. Good. Can you go lay down now? Okay. All right. All right.
I have cats, so they only come in at inopportune times, not at perfect times like dogs.
Yeah, they don't really follow rules, from my understanding. All right. Well, I hope everybody's having a fantastic Sunday. Eric and I are going to try something new. I don't know if this is going to be a weekly thing. That's kind of what we're shooting for. We're going to do, well, it's going to be a hodgepodge of things. We're going to have topics that we want to talk about. Sometimes we might do deep dives. Sometimes we might go off on tangents just about random funny things. Who knows? It's just going to go where it goes. So we got a bunch of clips that we're going to get through. First of all, here, let me bring up the chat first. Let's say hi to people. So if you guys are on Rumble, say hi.
Yeah, and Michael is, he's doing what he's doing. He's running for state senate in California. It's amazing. I'm a comedian and a filmmaker, and so just for my history background, I always wanted to cover some history on this show, because oftentimes we want to cover current events as well, but we don't want to get too caught up in the current. Now we want to look back as well and kind of think of how that reflects upon now.
You're so deep and intellectual, Eric. See, I couldn't have put things that eloquently like you just did.
Oh, thank you.
That smart. So, all right, in God's hands, Terry Wallace, Wally World, CC Pino, nice to see you. Can you see? You can't see the chat over on your end, huh? Because you don't have StreamYard.
No, I can see it. I can see these. I know exactly what you're talking about. I see the same comments.
Okay, which chat are you watching? Because I got them in like separate windows over here.
Oh, I got the StreamYard chat, and then is there like a Rumble chat?
Yeah, there's a Rumble chat too. Okay. That's the only one that doesn't show. So StreamYard's YouTube and X. So if you guys are hanging out over on X and you want to troll us or say something silly, please feel free. Yeah, and then we got a whole nother separate chat over on Rumble. There's we got a regular crew over there on Rumble. So yeah, I don't know how it's gonna. Yeah, this is gonna be fun. I don't know where we're gonna go with this, but let's. Keep going. Sorry, Eric. Tell the crowd a little bit about yourself, because I was such a terrible co-host.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, so me and my wife, we made multiple documentary films in response to censorship that we've experienced, post 2020, and so we started with American History of Voter Fraud, which is very prescient because of this week and January 6th. It's definitely coming up often. It's the history of election rigging over 200 years in America. You have World Death Organization. I actually have a clip we're going to go over of that film later on. It's the history of scientific eugenics. And then we have the trial of Anthony Fauci. And all those can be found at lilahart.com/documentary. And of course, my Twitter.
Well, all right, my friend. You want to just hop right into some stuff?
I mean, yeah, I think the whole point of this, what we want to do is we just want to get into a variety of things. And so I wanted to start off. Did you have the
whichever one you want, homie?
It's going to be down at the bottom. So scroll all the way down. Basically, it's the one that says the Cutter incident. That one. I want to go over this one because it's from the film World Death Organization, and oftentimes I just hear this over and over. The polio vaccine was so great. Well, let's review the first 2 weeks of the polio vaccine being rolled out and how that worked out. This is from World Death Organization.
You want me to read what you wrote first, or you just want me to
just play it.
All right, here we go, folks. This is a clip from the World Death Organization.
whose name was Jonas Salk. He took poliovirus, he grew it in cells in the laboratory, and then he purified the virus and killed it with formaldehyde. And what he found was that if he took this formaldehyde inactivated virus, injected it into the arms of children, he could induce an immune response. And the way that he proved that was a big clinical trial, giving 3 doses of vaccine to 420,000 children. At the time, that vaccine for this trial was made by 2 companies, Eli Lilly and Park Davis. The announcement that this vaccine worked was made on April the 12th, 1955. 2:15 that afternoon, that vaccine was submitted for licensure to the National Institutes of Health. And at 5 o'clock, it was licensed. So it took about 2 hours and 45 minutes. Department of Health, Education, and Welfare was angry that it took that long. Because it took so long, 2 hours and 45 minutes, that really went beyond the time in which it was going to be on the news that night. There were 5 companies actually that received the license. Wyeth, Pittman Moore, and Cutter also made vaccine, which was licensed and released at that time, even though those vaccines had never been tested in a clinical trial. The 5 companies that made vaccine, the quantities of vaccine that they made and distributed, April 12th, 1955. 2 weeks later, this headline appeared in the New York Times. One firm's vaccine barred, 6 polio cases are studied. All 6 children were paralyzed in their arms. Also, all 6 cases involved paralysis in the arm that was injected. And the vaccine that they were injected in all 6 cases was vaccine made by Cutter Laboratories, a pharmaceutical company in Berkeley, California. They withdrew Cutter's vaccine from the market, and frankly, about 2 weeks later, withdrew all polio vaccines for the market. The federal government could figure out what was going on. 2 of those lots were associated with a very high instance of paralysis. Every dose, those 2 high-risk lots contained natural, virulent, dangerous poliovirus, virus that hadn't been adequately inactivated with formaldehyde. About 120,000 children were inoculated inadvertently with live poliovirus. Those children actually started a small man-made polio epidemic, and 100,000 of their family or community contacts were also infected. 70,000 people developed abortive polio caused by poliovirus that was made by Cutter in their laboratories. 164 people were permanently paralyzed, and about 10 were killed. It was probably one of the worst biological disasters in the history of the United States.
So, but I just want to ask you this really quick. Did you know that the polio vaccine working and eradicating polio, did you know that's a complete lie?
So, okay, so I'm fuzzy on all of this, but from what I've heard, wasn't polio not eradicated, but wasn't it just going way down for a long time, and then right when it came out is when it was like pretty much at its bottom?
Well, so there was a small incidence increase because there was a baby boom. And so just the amount of babies and young children in general increased in the populations. There was a slight increase, but yes, overall, because of increases in technology and hygiene, that you were seeing that diseases like this, it's not that they were going to be completely eradicated, but it was a smaller and smaller problem. Certainly not something where you'd need to mass inoculate the entire population of your country. And the issue is when they rolled this out in Idaho and other places in that area, a bunch of kids, they got paralyzed in the arm they were injected with. And in the end, there was all these different contamination issues that they warned Jonas Salk about. I mean, did you know that for Jonas Salk's vaccine, we had to kill 10,000 monkeys, and we had to grind up their testicles and their kidneys, and that is the basis for the polio vaccine. And and you can see in the film, we show you this part during the press conference, right after the Cutter incident, and Jonas Salk is being questioned about his faulty vaccines. They're like, well, since it's made from monkeys, are there any monkey viruses in this vaccine? And you hear Jonas Salk in the film be like, no, it's not, there's no chance. And of course, yes, that his polio vaccine and essentially all the polio vaccines were contaminated with monkey viruses. And one of them in particular was called SV40, and it's a cancerous monkey virus. And that, we can get into this later or another time, but the COVID vaccine also found to be contaminated with that exact same monkey virus, SV40. So it's just one of those things where over and over you see the same problem because we aren't learning from history. And this is kind of something, as we also go over current events, I like to do this segment once in a while and just highlight a piece of history like this.
Well, Wally World seems to remember taking his polio vaccine on a sugar cube back in the 60s.
Yes. Yeah. This is
before a Grateful Dead concert.
Yeah. And so we show this also in World Death Organization, and how archaic this whole system is laughable. I mean,
he's making an acid joke, but
well, no, I mean, this is that sounds like a joke. They did do vaccines that way, and we show you in the film.
Really? On a sugar cube?
Yes. Okay.
Really?
Yes. Okay. We also had vaccines that they, bragged.
Maybe Wally wasn't joking. I don't know.
Well, no, it is kind of like an acid joke, but in reality, that's part of, that is what Wally is talking about.
Oh, no, he's serious.
That's why this footage is really funny, because it does look like if you had changed the narration to they're giving these kids acid and they're going to trip balls, it would have been the same footage, but no, it's actually, that's what the polio vaccine. And in the footage, we show you this footage, they tested it out in Florida, and they're like, oh, it tasted like cherry, and so it's just like a really funny thing. But the funny part is you could see how the amount of drops that they put on the applicator, as they call it, like it wasn't, exact at all. You're seeing in the footage that they're giving various amounts, and it varies wildly. And so that's just another fun part about that. But yes, the polio vaccine, this is the oral polio vaccine, and this is Albert Sabin. And so we also cover him in the film, and he was the one actually discussing that they killed 10,000 monkeys for the polio vaccine. And Albert Sabin is talking about how he had nightmares actually, of monkeys in a court judging him, because of how many monkeys died for the polio vaccine.
Is that kind of how hey, humbled surfer, Terry Wallace, Casey Martin, In God's Hands?
Well, and then to Wally really quick, technically, if you look at it, Albert Sabin's vaccine was safer than Jonas Salk's vaccine. Albert Sabin kind of talking shit on Jonas Salk and his vaccine, was describing how people who took 3 or more doses, mind you, of Jonas Salk's polio vaccine, because 3 was the minimum. And so people who took 3 or more, 23 to 25% of them still contracted paralytic polio, meaning more people got polio, like paralyzed from polio from the vaccine than ever they would have been from contracting it in the wild. And it's just because we mass inoculated the whole population, as opposed to, again, the largest you would ever see was like 50,000 one year because of a baby boom. It was never really this prevalent problem that they would describe it, where we'd need to mass inoculate everybody. And again, 10 to 30 million people had SV40, that cancerous monkey virus, inside of them because of Jonas Salk's, unmitigated gall and, just blind confidence. Oh, there's no way monkey viruses could be in my vaccine, even though it's made from monkeys.
Well, that's awful. Yeah, I hate how much I don't trust the medical establishment anymore. I was just talking with Mary Talley Bowden about this when she was on. I'm not going to go back to my general care physician. It just, that whole experience was extremely annoying to me. I mean, I don't know if I told you about that. I needed to get a knee surgery. So before you get a knee surgery, you have to get a referral, to a specialist from your primary care physician. So I go there, and I've been seeing this doctor for a few years, and I didn't see him all through COVID. And when I go to see him, I'm in like peak physical fitness, because of the whole running thing. And I think this was like right during like the Omicron time, so like vaccines are out. Everybody could have had them by then. We're like towards the end of it. And just to see what he said, I asked him, I was like, do you still think I should take the COVID vaccine? Because I hadn't taken it up until that point. And he recommended that I take it then. I was just, all right. I just lost like all all faith in you, that's for sure. Just like we started seeing effects at that point. We knew the risks of COVID, especially for like my age group and my fitness level. I didn't have any comorbidities. It shocked me that you still. And I said to him, I was like, can they even call it a vaccine anymore? I was like, because it doesn't stop transmission. And I was like, they just changed the definition. I was like, they just changed the definition of vaccine. And he straight up says to me, you got to be careful what conspiracy theories you read online. That was his response to me. I was like, dude, they legitimately changed the definition. I'm not making this up. And it doesn't stop transmission. Like, you're the doctor. Why am I, it was so frustrating, dude. It was just the.
Well, it will be even more frustrating. I have this picture saved. The doctor gets kickbacks for every person that gets inoculated under his program. So he actually is financially incentivized to tell people to get the shot and then have him be like the referral.
It was carrot and the stick, because California did the whole, we're going to take your license if you talk shit on the vaccine. Remember that?
Yes. So there's the people like him who actually like want to make money from it, or there are good people who just like they can't truly advocate for it, but they can't say anything too bad about it or else they lose their license.
But people like doctors aren't. I hope there's doctors watching. I hope doctors hear this. But if there's doctors that recommended to people to take this vaccine that didn't, especially young men, like, because that seems to be the ones that are having the big heart issues, like young athletic men. That was my ultimate fear. Because, dude, leading up to COVID, I go through this. I literally went through a transformation. I quit drinking. I started running, and I became an athlete again. And I'm in this elite physical fitness. If all of a sudden, if I would have took this thing and that it took that away from me, dude, that would have been like a reality shattering thing. It would. So I can only imagine how all these athletes, where it's like all of a sudden they can't, just even having like a performance decrease, like, but there's plenty of athletes who won't ever be able to do their sport again. That the doctors that knowingly recommended that their patients take this when they know that COVID wasn't that much of a risk to them. They knew that there could potentially be some risk of side effects. They didn't know how bad, but there was the people that recommended this and knowingly did it, that were just like, you'll be fine, and did it for financial incentives. Blood on their hands, dude. Like, people straight up died.
Well, it's a violation of Hippocratic oath, and
straight up.
There are this is the whole basis of the trial of Anthony Fauci. Is we are trying to determine did his unethical experiments harm people to the point where he should have his medical license removed.
Where has that little gremlin been, by the way? He's been awful quiet, hasn't he?
He retired and he's been chilling, and people's furor for him is kind of it's still there, but they're moving on to other things too, and he's feeling pretty good about that. But in the end, all it takes is him being committed for perjury, which is even Rand Paul said no one's committed perjury potentially more than Anthony Fauci during hearings in front of us, yet they haven't done anything about it, which kind of shows you where we're at on that.
Terry Wallace says, my daughter's pediatrician didn't say a word about the vax when I took her for a physical in 2021 or 2022. She was 13 and 14. I was prepped though, so yeah, she wasn't about to let her kid take that.
Well, it's really and part of this, and we cover this in the Anthony Fauci film, is 1986. Reagan signed the Vaccine Injury Act as well. And after that, you just saw a massive increase in the amount of vaccinations put on the schedule. And so this is another major issue, is that we continually have more and more vaccines and more shots that, we didn't used to have. I mean, again, in World Health Organization, we show you in the Netherlands, they didn't give the smallpox vaccine to their population, and specifically to military population, And the doctors in the late 60s in our film were remarking, yeah, they're doing so much better than the Americans in health wise, and they have so much less encephalitis, brain swelling. And so it's just, this is there used to be honest doctors who would describe to you that, yeah, if anyone in your family has any history of seizures, you should not be getting a vaccine, because that is a risk that would expose you to adverse events to the vaccine. They used to tell you that pre the 1986 Injury Act. Now that they can get away with all the injuries, they don't really care to do so anymore, and describe to you actually all the contraindications that would make you valid for being, exempt from vaccination. There used to be a lot more valid reasons, and now they've removed those post 1986. That's a big shame.
It's on the schedule for kids in California, right, to go to school?
Yes. And this stems back to Jacobson versus Massachusetts, unfortunately, the Supreme Court case all the way back in the early 1900s. And it's basically the Supreme Court determined that the United States is a police state that can they can force vaccinations upon you. Now, there is a lot of leeway into that to protect yourself from the state in that, but that Supreme Court case has been a big thorn in our side in protecting medical freedom, because it's been a long precedent that we've had to fight.
Yeah, so my buddy pulled his kid out of school over all this crap, but I believe there's some sort of, can you just pull your kid out of school if you wanted to? It's like, yeah, my kid's not going to go to school anymore. And like, you don't have to give the state a reason or anything. It's your kid. You can pull him out of school if you want, right?
See, I'm not fully sure on this, but okay, I'll give you a lot of terrible examples here. I know through the Fauci film that we had a lot of cases of parents like losing custody of their children because they didn't adhere to the AIDS doctrine of how to take care of their children. And so if you didn't give your kid these AIDS drugs, which are pretty much
AIDS drugs. What are you talking about? AIDS drugs.
Oh, we're back in the 80s. If your kid had AIDS, by the way, these tests, they admit, were incredibly faulty, and it had tons of false positives. So let's say
your kid had AIDS.
Yes, this is a common thing in the 80s that we cover. If your kid had AIDS and you didn't prescribe them the AIDS medication, that the government would take your kids away.
Wait, hold on. Back the truck up. Why would your kid have AIDS?
What do you mean, why would your kid have AIDS? During the 80s, this became a thing. Now, here's the other thing. Like I just said, there were a lot of AIDS tests that were very faulty and gave kids false positives. And from then, they were still prescribed a lifetime of AIDS drugs just from false positive tests. And then they were taken away from their parents if they tried to give them alternative medications. And we show you in the Fauci film footage of just one of many examples of a parent who lost their child because they didn't give their kid AIDS drugs because they had AIDS, according to a test. And yes, Wally, very astute. So we briefly cover Ryan White, who was one of many children who, through a blood transfusion, had AIDS. And so there were many examples of just like, and again, there's footage of Fauci saying, "Oh, the blood supply is totally fine. You don't need to worry about, a bunch of people with potentially with, you don't need to worry about people at risk donating the blood. It's not going to be a big deal." And then all of a sudden, there were a lot of people who got a blood transfusion, and because the only requirement was like, hey, if you think you might have an issue with your blood, voluntarily don't give blood. And that was their only security for it. So there was a lot of blood in the blood supply, and there still is to this day, where it's just contaminated. And if you, bad luck of the draw, bad Russian roulette, you could get contaminated blood. And so it's just a thing. Like Ryan White, again, was just one of many kids. He was famous because he met up with Michael Jackson and got a car with him, from his famous story. And, Fauci got the Ryan White Award. There's just a million examples of kids who, have got AIDS through either, again, a false positive or unfortunate, blood transfusions from the blood supply being faulty, etc. There's a million different reasons.
Okay, well, shit. That was a whole subject that's like a rabbit hole. I don't even know if I want to go down.
It's a bit. There's a lot of different things about this. Yeah, it's really disturbing. And so when you're talking about not trusting the medical, establishment, there's a long history well before COVID as to why you wouldn't want to trust them.
Oh, I mean, I didn't before COVID, and then I never go to the doctor. I only go there if something happened, if I got a catastrophic injury of some sort, which I've had way too many of. But yeah, that's what I always say is healthcare doesn't come from the hospital and pharma. That's not where healthcare comes from. It comes from, the gym, the trails, the farmer's market, and the perimeter of the grocery store. All right. You want to do a hard segue? Let's
yeah, go for it.
Let's go to actually, you know what? There's something I want to talk about. There's something
you take control.
There is a clip that I want to play because this is coming up again, and I'm not trying to be alarmist, but food shortages. I mean, we've been talking about engineered food shortages for a while. And I don't know how old this video is, but there's people that have been trying to sort of sound alarm bells about this for a while, that it's like, I'm getting a little tinfoily here. You know how I get. There's people that seem to be claiming that they are, that it's not an accident. Like many other things don't appear to be on accident. That, border, fentanyl, all like crime, stuff that they're just allowing to happen. Well, this gentleman seems to think that the government is engineering food shortages. So I'll play this and tell me what you think.
Hey everybody, this is Shad Sullivan coming to you from the headwaters of Bitter Creek, Archer County, North Texas. We have to talk. State officials will be assisting to help identify potential alternative markets if a producer is unable to move animals, and if necessary, advise and assist on depopulation and disposal methods. Ladies and gentlemen, we are plowing under vegetable crops from coast to coast. We are euthanizing millions of chickens. We are aborting sows and burying feeder pigs. We are dumping milk by the hundreds of thousands of gallons, and now they are preparing us to depopulate the fat cattle ready to harvest because of a bottleneck created by the effects of COVID. This thing hasn't been created by COVID, but the effects of COVID and the logistics therein. We are in trouble. Our food supply is in trouble. And I am appealing to producers and consumers across the nation to start calling. Yesterday, the first shipment of imported beef from the country of Namibia hit the shores of the United States of America. And yet this morning, they are telling us to prepare to euthanize harvest-ready cattle. Am I the only one that sees a problem in this? It is time we get the American people back to work. It is time we get money flowing. It is time we get food on the shelves. Because if you're not concerned about this food supply problem, you better be. Hey, everybody.
All right. Thoughts? Oh, did you mute yourself or did I mute you?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, this is a subject of, we cover in World Death Organization, because this is about eugenics. In eugenics, also in terms of selecting a population of the good genes versus the bad genes. It's also about controlling resources and controlling the population in that sense. And so, I would point to you specifically to one speech. It's it's a Rockefeller speech, 1966, February 14th, and it's called The Population Problem. And in it, I forget which Rockefeller, I'll have to go back, but one of these Rockefellers is talking about, how we have to control population across the world. But within it specifically, he talks about the transition of farming and how we're going to take farming from these small family-owned farms into these grand mechanized farms. And now he's saying farmers of the future, and mind you, this is 1966. He said farmers of the future are going to have to know how to control machines. They're not going to really know how to. They won't have to know how to interact with the land. It's more about how to use machines to interact with that land. And so basically what he was describing is like he was taking away power from a collective of farmers and consolidating it down to a group of elite farmers who could afford these machines. And so in the end, when you're talking about food, they're kind of trying to control the food supply again. And they've already taken it and whittled it down to just these farmers who have these large farms due to machines. You can't just have like a really small scale farm and survive these days. You'll go bankrupt. And now they've even taken that even more. And they're saying, okay, with supply chain issues and with inflation and with a forced, culling of your cattle, now we're going to even slim you down even more. They're basically trying to remove as many normal people from food supply production as possible so that they can control the populace via food production. I guess it's easy.
That dude, what is his name? Amit Bundy or something. Actually, that's probably not his name. The guy that gets repeatedly hassled by is it the FDA? The feds, they come and hassle. He's like an Amish guy, or I don't even know if
Bundy. Bundy was another person who was getting hassled, I believe.
It's the Oregon thing, huh?
The Oregon, yeah.
No. So Thomas Massey was just talking about this. It happened yesterday or the day before.
It's like the Amos farm or the Miller farm, something like that.
Yes. Yeah. So they do raw milk, and like that kind of stuff. It's just all, grass-fed beef and, just natural stuff that it's not factory farmed. And they're constantly hassling them. It just seems, they're like everything else. They crack down on people that are trying to be like self-sufficient. Like people that are trying to defend themselves too, you can't. Every time Americans try to basically be self-sufficient, people that can produce their own food, people that can defend themselves, people that can educate themselves, and make detached communities where you're not reliant on big factory farming and big pharma, big tech, big government, all this stuff. Everything seems geared towards getting everyone into their box. Everybody, every aspect of your life where you need something, food, transportation, information, all of that stuff is just there's the amount of control over it by the state has become so unreasonable. Every single aspect of everything that I just mentioned, like those are like the most important things: food, transportation, information. Like what else? Like those, they're so heavily controlled. They want to tax how us by mile now, how far we drive. You heard about this? California talking about doing this? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then everybody has to have an electric car. It's the 15-minute cities things where they want everybody to stay within their little I'm not trying to get too tinfoily here, but it's
a control of the population. Yes.
Well, it's like when the same thing is happening in different like areas, so you got like the border and the crime is something that I always make an analogy to. So the border's wide open and it seems like they are intentionally flooding our country with people that aren't from here, right? At the same time, they're not prosecuting criminals and they're allowing criminals, like it's a revolving door of crime, so they're flooding the streets with criminals as well. It seems intentional. And then with the whole food supply thing, if they are telling farmers they have to cull their cattle and they're, telling people to destroy crops and stuff, that's intentional. It's just, it all seems so nefarious, and again, I'm not trying to get too tinfoily, but it's like, it's that you could point directly at things that are happening, not in theory, things that are actually happening right now that you can confirm. And sorry, I don't really know what my point is there.
No, you're seeing a controlled demolition of America before your very own eyes, and one would wonder why would someone be motivated to do that? And then now you're considering, is this a Manchurian candidate controlling things right now? I mean, you can get down to a lot of different rabbit holes, but yes, if you just wanted to take the food supply thing and just take that in a vacuum, I see it through a more eugenic lens, because the amount resources are potentially infinite, but it's the people who control the resources, the true elites, through supply and demand. They want to make sure that they are getting the most profits from the control of resources. They aren't motivated by spreading and allocating the resources, as much as possible to give people as much access to those resources. That's not their motivation. And so that's how I see the food supply shortage. It's a manufactured problem so that they can exacerbate the inflation that we're going through, so that they can continue to really make a lot of profit, from the situation that they're currently in. It's just, it's unfortunate. We're being controlled by these people.
It feels more than that to me. It feels that it feels that they are intentionally trying to keep everyone at a certain level of stress, like not where everybody's freaking out like at a 10 all the time, but a slightly elevated level of stress. And that seems to be ramping up all the time. And all these problems that we have are all manufactured. Like the gas prices, manufactured, especially here in California. You go and anywhere else in the country, the gas is $1 at least cheaper, per gallon. Everything is manufactured price wise, like just obviously the printing of trillions of dollars. It's the lockdowns, just tons of the problems that we're having were all created by ourselves. It's not like you get what I'm saying. This is it.
Well, okay, so I guess we have to take one at a time. So in terms of gas going up, that was one caused by the fact that Biden wanted to basically undo everything Trump did and do the exact opposite to prove that their administration was smarter.
Well, here in California, we stopped drilling.
I'm gonna get to the California thing. So there's a very fun thing with that one. So in terms of Biden, he just stopped drilling 3 million barrels a day. Times that by 365, that's 1 billion barrels of oil. And it's just like that adds up quick. Diesel is really the indicator, not your driving gas, but diesel that indicates, the price of, driving around goods. And that's when you really saw inflation get exacerbated, especially. And then Gavin Newsom in the state of California is really greedy and they take an extra $1.04 or something like that. I was looking at this graphic, and it's like an extra $1.04. They're like, they profit $1.04 per gallon, whereas like the gasoline companies, they profit 14 cents a gallon. So it's really the state of California who's greedy on gas, and they're the ones driving up the price on you. And that's nothing like $1.04 of it is just explained by California and how much they want to profit on it and nothing else.
But it's not just the tax. It's you know how much oil we sit on top of, right? In California here.
Yeah, and that's like going back to Trump policies and, you know, full spectrum energy dominance, and the fact that, yeah, we can drill all of the oil that we want just from domestically, and then we can have, you know, Trump, for all his faults, and, you know, like the CARES Act was like, you know, a ridiculous spending, but at least he was able to offset it a little bit by being energy dominant. And then when you got into Biden territory, not only were we doing ridiculous spending, you know, like Trump was doing, but now we had lost energy dominance and we're buying oil from other countries as opposed to selling it. You know, you're talking a huge difference. And so, you know, that's just one small thing. But yeah, people don't understand that about, you know, going back to the cost of goods and, you know, the amount of, you know, the food shortage issue. That's a big part of this problem, was Biden thinking they were smarter than Trump and saying, let's go away from being the number one producer of energy. That's a great idea.
Well, California just in particularly great. Well, a lot of this was Gavin Newsom's call, though, right? Like shutting down specific refineries in California.
Well, again, this is Gavin Newsom's call within the Democratic Party platform.
Gotcha.
I mean, this is something they also are pushing with him, and they're cheering him on and congratulating him for. And it's not like he, you know, thought of it himself. This is part of a trend in that party.
It's very, very frustrating. The more you look at the issues that California faces and realize that every single one of them is created by our own making.
Yeah, I mean, this is Democrat policies coming to fruition. People forget that, you know, California was built mostly by great Republican leadership over time, and then they, you know, built up a surplus, and they had all these, you know, they had all this great industry, and then Democrat policies just came over and just started sucking from the success and the surplus. And then at some point it's completely all gone. And now people are wondering, hey, what happened? What happened to this great California? Well, you know, you can't consistently punish the people who follow the rules and then reward people who don't follow the rules for decades under Democrat policies and think that that's going to work. You know, the people who, you know, can pay, you know, taxes and can pay tickets over and over, they get punished. And then meanwhile, you can be homeless and, you know, pop up a tent right on the sidewalk. That's totally fine.
That's the most frustrating thing. I mean, I was talking about this yesterday. Like, I followed the Highway Patrol. Say hi, Whiskey Reaper. Nice to see you. Yeah. So Whiskey Reaper says you're spot on. Humbled Surfer. Government is here to help you. Casey Martin. The Dems / the left sold us out to China. Yeah, that is definitely true. Well, all right. So the CHP, I follow them on Instagram. They put out a post yesterday they were so proud about how they pulled over this car. I think they impounded it, and it was because it had the windscreen, the windshield was tinted, and the front windows were tinted.
The weather's getting colder outside, and you.
So they go out. I believe they impounded the guy's car. It's just for window tinting. They said his exhaust was too loud. They even put that on there. Like, it is illegal in California to have any exhaust that amplifies the existing engine noise. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, Flowmasters are illegal now? Like, just anyway. So they have that. This is California. This is California Highway Patrol talking about all the things they go after you about your car for, right? You can deal fentanyl on the streets. Like, well, you know what's funny is if I decided, well, you know what, I've been canceled from my career, nobody will hire me anymore because of my my opinions and how I have an online platform. So nobody will hire me anymore. So maybe I'll just become a fentanyl dealer. If I were to do that because I'm an actual US citizen and I'm from California, I would get in trouble. They would actually try to prosecute me. But if you know about I already talked to you about the Honduran fentanyl dealers, right?
Yeah, I mean, your plan that you're talking about, all of it would work. You just have to illegally enter the country first.
Right.
That's the issue. Is you got here legally. You just have to, exit and then enter again, and then you'll be good to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You know about the fentanyl dealers, right?
Continue.
So Chesa Badin, you know who Chesa Badin is?
No.
He's the former district attorney of San Francisco. He got recalled. Brooke Jenkins replaced him, but he was like a straight up socialist. He was a Soros DA, just like Pamela Price over in.
Okay. I do know what you're talking about. CHESA.
Yes, Chesa Badin. Yes.
Okay. I do know you're talking about. Sorry.
So there's this infamous video of him talking. I could pull it up, but I'll just explain it to you. He's just explaining about how a lot of the fentanyl dealers here are illegally here they were trafficked here from Honduras, and if they don't keep dealing fentanyl on the streets, their family back at home is at risk of being hurt by the cartels or whatever. So he's basically saying, yeah, they're here illegally, and yeah, they're dealing fentanyl, but we kind of have to keep letting them do it, or else they're going to hurt their families back in Honduras. Like, this is what he's saying. So yes, these dudes are legitimately arrested. So you get illegal immigrants here, where, I mean, in the past, when I was a kid, if you're caught as an illegal immigrant, you're gone. You get deported. Yeah. So not only are these guys arrested for dealing fentanyl and then not charged and let back out on the streets to go deal fentanyl again, they're here illegally. They're not United States citizens. So it's this huge double whammy. It's like we've legalized coming here illegally, and we've legalized dealing hard drugs on the street and using hard drugs on the street. It's like, it's so brain-breakingly mad that when you vocalize it, it's like, how insane does that sound? Like, really think about it when I say this out loud. We've legalized illegal immigration. We've legalized dealing hard drugs on the street. And we've also legalized walking into a retail store, filling your backpack with merchandise, as long as you keep it under $9.50, and walking out the front door. And on top of that, you can walk a few blocks down the street, set up a table or a blanket, and sell all that stuff to the neighbors that can no longer shop at the store because it's not there anymore because you stole all their shit.
But don't park in the wrong spot for 5 seconds. You're going to get a $73 ticket.
Oh, 73? I got my work van towed. I got my work van towed in San Francisco in the financial district once. How much do you think it was to get it out? When I got there immediately. I got to the impound yard within 15 minutes.
$1,000.
It was $750. But it wasn't
it's still god awful.
It wasn't $750 that I had. If I would have waited another hour, I think it would have been close to $1,000, because it was like $180 an hour. It's absurd. You know how many cars that they just get? That's a whole racket too in San Francisco. It's a giant racket with the tow yards and the city, because they tow so many people's cars that are just like barely making it. The people that aren't homeless, they got a car that they're barely keeping running, barely keeping passing smog so they can have current tags on it. And then they accidentally park in the wrong spot because you need a damn cipher to figure out where you can park in San Francisco. It's like, I can't park here every third Wednesday of every other leap year on like during daylight savings time. Like, that's the kind of signs that they have in San Francisco. You can't figure out where you're allowed to park. So you're barely holding on. You go there to drop off somebody's freaking DoorDash, park in the wrong spot, and all of a sudden your car's gone. You don't have the money to get it out. You can't afford it. And you just have to sign your car over. That happens all the time. People, they just jack people for their cars. Like, poor people barely making it. Jack for the car, by the city, by the tow yards.
And the elites are like, one less car on the road. Traffic is going to get slightly better today. Thank God Oxford's not on the road. He was clogging it up for us.
Well, and a lot of these people in Pacific Heights that have like the giant houses on top of the hill, like most people don't know this about the tech executives around here. like the top of the top tech executives. I'm obviously not going to say where they live, but if you know where they live and you go by their house, you will see at all times, 24/7, if they're home, running SUVs, at least 3 or 4 of them outside of their house, running SUVs with armed security sitting inside them at all times. So like idling, the people are talking about climate change all the time and emissions and all that crap. Yeah. So it's not only their private jets, it's the security that they have idling in front of their house at all times. They have the carbon footprint of like 400 of us.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, because they have at least like a dozen, maids, chauffeur, private security, like they have a whole staff. Yeah, it's disgusting. Yeah, and that's why they don't really care about law and order, because they have their own private security. So what does it matter? That's the public security. The cops, you can't hire your own security. Sad peasants. So it's just that's another issue with our elites, is like we should, the moment you start to advocate for defund the police stuff, you should lose your private security. It's like, all right, you said what you said, now lie in that bed. So I would just, that's what I would hope for, is like, shut up with this defund the police BS. But yeah.
Let's see. Whiskey Reaper, I love to fire up my 32 and throttle it just to make up for the Teslas around me. That's funny. 32 Ford Roadster. I like it. Casey Martin, SB54 makes it illegal for California law enforcement to cooperate or notify ICE or any feds regarding illegal aliens. You know that, right?
Say it one more time. I think it's important.
Basically, cops aren't allowed to tell. What does ICE stand for again?
It's immigration
control agent. I don't know.
Yeah, but it's immigration.
Whatever. Yeah. So local authorities in California, whatever the agency, California authorities aren't allowed to tell immigration if they got an illegal immigrant here. It's not that it would matter now anyway, because Biden's
it's immigration and customs enforcement. So yeah, we didn't miss the good part. But yeah, I am disturbed. Like, for instance, if you just look at our immigration, issue currently, the illegal immigration that we're just allowing to have happen. There's a clip I had where it was just the Border Patrol cut a portion of the razor wire in Eagle Pass, Texas, and they were helping the illegal immigrants go over the shipping containers. And so they were just helping them get over. And it was just like, it's under Trump, we had this thing where if they were apprehended and put under asylum, they would have to remain in Mexico until all that was resolved. But
yeah, what was that thing that ended? What was it called?
What?
Some sort of Trump policy ended like shortly after Biden.
So the biggest one in terms of like statistically is the remain in Mexico policy. I'm not sure if that's what it's officially called, but anyways, that policy being rescinded, they estimate like 73% of the immigration today could be stopped with just that policy. Mind you, all the other things they were trying to do with the border. But yeah, that's like, that's a big issue of what we're currently doing. If you want the conspiratorial angle of why they would want so much immigration, it's because even if they, piss off their current population and they couldn't possibly win a re-election, well, what if you just imported a whole new population and then you used their names on ballots and they unwittingly voted for you and then you won re-election that way? And it's not that conspiratorial, because in American History of Voter Fraud, we go over how the California DMV has multiple times taken batches of 100,000 illegal immigrants and taken their date of their birthplace and changed it from wherever it was to a generic California or USA, and they made them voting eligible. And then they said, yes. And we this is admitted by them, by the way. And then they say it's a human error. And then it's like,
well, to backtrack a little bit, that's because everybody that gets a ID or driver's license in California is automatically registered to vote, correct?
Well, yes, but there were people, there were like, the fact that they call it a human error, right? And it's like, oh, this is my bad, and then, but they can't do anything about it. Over and over it happens. Last year in 2023, Forest Mommy let me know that it happened in Colorado to the tune of 30,000. So it's just a common issue that, oh, we screwed up, oh no, and now they're voting eligible. It's just the American history of voter fraud. This is a common tactic. LBJ he was a Spanish teacher, and so he was rumored to take some of the Spanish names on the voter registration list and use them for false votes for him.
Well, the talk is now they're just going to straight up make it legal for illegal immigrants to vote. They're already moving in that direction. Like
in New York City, we forget because it wasn't so long ago. They literally advocated for illegal immigrants to be able to vote in New York City.
Well, I'm sure they're doing it here too.
But to openly advocate for it was just so funny to me. Like, you guys are desperate.
But the cop thing, you don't have to be a U.S. citizen to be a cop in California. Like I talk about this every show because it's so absurd to me. But you know that, right?
I didn't know that part, but my other thing with this is like, I'm so paranoid that, a whole group of illegal immigrants could come in and then they could, take control of a portion of these illegal immigrants, especially the military age males, deputize them as like some federal police force of immigrants that they control. And they're going to have no connection to the country. And so they'll be able to do, the most horrific forms of tyranny using this like new federalized police. But that's just something I'm worried about. But continue.
Well, that's a whole that's called something. That's there's a whole You're not the only person that thinks that, but just California made it legal. You don't have to be a United States citizen to be a California police officer. And San Francisco Police Department was the first agency to implement this policy. And it very clearly says, but you do have to be legally allowed to work in California. It's like, okay, well, what does that mean? Because illegal aliens are allowed to work in California. They've set it up that way. You can get ID. So does that mean illegal aliens can become cops? That's what I haven't gotten a clear answer on this yet either. So it seems to me that they've created a pathway for illegal aliens to become cops and cartel members to become cops. And I was talking about it yesterday with that, put that off to the side a little bit. Cops can now be cops and they don't have to be United States citizens. Okay. Well, at the same time, in San Francisco, so San Francisco cops don't have to be United States citizens anymore. At the same time, you had the head of the San Jose police union that was busted as basically a fentanyl kingpin, right? Flooding the streets of San Francisco. And then you got these Honduran illegal immigrant fentanyl dealers that are arrested, and it's a revolving door. They know who they are, so they don't even arrest them anymore. They're just allowed to operate with impunity. So I'm starting to, at what point do you ask, has San Francisco government been captured by cartels?
Well, this is also a federal issue. I mean, this will make you laugh, but not even 7 days ago, Biden fast-tracked work authorization for legal immigrants coming into this country. So what you're describing is literally has been expedited. An illegal immigrant can come into this country and have an expedited process for work authorization. And then, yes, they could become a cop in California. And it's quicker than ever before, thanks to Biden.
We should probably fact check ourselves on everything you just said, but yeah, it does appear that you can, like, that is one of the most insane things to me, that you can become a cop and you don't have to be a United States citizen. Like, I'm of the idea, I want to redo policing the entire way we do policing. I ideally would like to have privatized police, but that aside, if we're going to use the system that we have in place, I feel like cops should have to live within the community that they're policing. You know, if you're a Santa Cruz County sheriff, I think you should have to live in Santa Cruz County. If you are a San Jose police officer, I think you should have to live in San Jose. And San Jose is so giant, they have different precincts. You know, I think if you're a cop within a precinct, you should have to live within that precinct, or however they call it, you know, however they map out the area. And the reason behind that is you're accountable to your community. You live in your community. You see your community members. If you see your community members at the store, you run into each other, you know, you're part of the community, you're much less likely to be an authoritarian and be abusive with your authority. You know, you're just, oh, okay, you know people, and you're not. You get what I'm saying?
There's a measure of accountability when you live in that community. Yes.
Yes, a level of accountability directly to your community. Well, if you don't live in that community, that distances you from that accountability, right?
There's at least the psychological shame that could potentially be put in, and then there's also the exposure and to the consequences of either good decisions or bad decisions that you make. So yes, no, it makes perfect sense.
And the farther removed from that community you are, the farther removed from any sort of responsibility to that community you have. So if you're bringing in illegal immigrants that they've never been here, like they didn't grow up here, they don't know. Believe it or not, America actually does have culture. You know, like there's a reason why our immigration process, our legal immigration process, is so difficult. You know, like the people that become United States citizens, they generally know more about United States history than people that are born here. You know, just it's hard to become a United States citizen, and by the end of that whole process, you're almost patriotic. You know, and how many countries allow people to just, if you want to, if you go through all the steps, you can become a citizen? Like, how many countries allow that from anywhere? You know, it's the fact that we have just completely skirted that process, and we've said we're gonna have open borders now. That's essentially what we have done. We don't have border patrol. We have border processing agents. We are human trafficking because, like, they've made the borders open without officially opening them. So not only do you have the open borders problem, but now you've created like a black market for it as well, because you still have to kind of pretend that it's illegal when everybody knows it's not. You know, the whole thing's so screwed up, and it creates so many new problems with the human trafficking, the drug trafficking, the arms trafficking, and then obviously people that could be coming over here creating terrorist cells. You know, there's so many problems with it. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I love what you said about, you have to be within the community and really, be accountable. I mean, if you think about it, politicians are so removed from the communities that they govern. We should force them. They have to live in the worst area of the area they're governing, and then maybe they'll be motivated to turn that around. Like, if you're the governor of California, like Gavin Newsom, you need to live in Skid Row, and then maybe you'll be motivated to turn that place around. Like, if you're London Breed, you need to live in the Tenderloin, and then maybe eventually you'll turn that place around, because you're just Maxine Waters doesn't even live close to the district that she governs, because it's not that nice. So, but she'd be much more motivated to make that area nice if she actually lived there. And so I think it's a good point that you make.
I wonder if Dean Preston lives in the Tenderloin. He's the supervisor for San Francisco, the Tenderloin.
I'm sure he lives in a much nicer area than living amongst the people. They all usually are in gated communities in their private security areas. And they, it's like, I've been covering Mayor Wu of Boston.
Yeah.
And like she has, private security, and she has like people around her house. And, if people even protesting on city sidewalk, that isn't hers. She is deemed that, no, this is my property. And then she uses the police and like gets your ass off there. I've covered multiple protesters like Michelle Effendi and people who are like on her enemies list. And so, yeah, like they will use the power of the state and they will abuse power as much as possible, so, to not be held accountable. Even if they aren't in a gated community, they will still make sure that they're gated by the power of the police. They're never truly like, oh, you can just walk up to them and, hold them accountable. No chance.
Let's play this clip of that tyrant that you're talking about right now.
Oh yeah, play the immigration one if you don't have that one lined up, because that one's a good one for what we were just talking about. For those who don't know, Boston Mayor Wu, Michelle Wu, she has so many different controversies. So right now she's just in it for her no whites controversy. Like she had this electeds of color party in Boston amongst the as a government party, and they weren't supposed to send out an email to everybody, just the electeds of color, but they CC'd every elected official, all the white ones as well. And one of the white members leaked it, and so that's like the current controversy. But she has so many controversies. Like there were 15 regular citizens who just protested like her vaccine mandates and stuff, or just were saying like shame on Wu, and they were on her enemies list. Like if you were in Boston, Michael, you totally would have been on this enemies list for sure.
I'm on quite a few enemies lists from my understanding.
But do you have the immigration clip of Mayor Wu? Because that one fits in perfectly. It was one of the two I sent you, and it's like the more close-up one of her.
I got it. Stand by.
No problem. But thank you to all the Boston people who've like they've been giving me a lot of tips on this woman. So I'm not a Boston, I wasn't really ingratiated with Boston politics, but they really caught me up quick. And because this woman is a rabbit hole and a half. Like she is in just a very short amount of time as Boston mayor has really been as communist as we've ever seen. Do you have it?
Yeah, I know. I'm waiting on you, bro.
Oh, okay, cool. I was just trying to stall for it. Okay, cool.
Am I not sharing it right now? What's going on?
Yeah, I don't see it. That's why I keep stalling. I'm like, okay, I'm trying to set it up. Yeah, but
it says it's sharing.
Okay, now it looks like it's about to. This is usually what happens when you share it. This one was a bombshell. Yeah, this one has collectively like 6 million views on it total. So this one's
everything is lagging super long tonight, and I don't know why. All right, hold up.
Every person, every human being has the legal right to come to the United States and seek asylum or shelter, and those policies have been in place for a long time. But when the review of that individual's particular situation and the then decision to allow the pathway to stay and or work authorization that comes
Michael Letter, thanks for joining.
Along with that, when that process is so drawn out, people are stuck. They are looking to work, looking to contribute, looking to be in a safe democracy where they can raise their families. And we at the city level are now dealing with many of the impacts of the processes having people fall through the cracks at the federal level. So we're working very closely with the state. This is affecting municipalities across the Commonwealth to be able to triage the situation, create temporary housing so that families can get settled. Every person, every human being.
She's a
every human being has the right to immigrate to the United States. That's a lot of people. That's like billions of people. Every human being has the legal right to come to the United States and seek asylum or shelter. Every single human. She's as radical as it's ever come. I mean, I really do feel for Boston. I have like
Dean Preston's worse than her. Dean Preston's. I mean, he's not he's not a mayor, but he's worse than her.
Oh, I'll look into Mr. Preston. I look forward to it. I've had a bunch of clips of Gavin Newsom that I think people just haven't really looked into, but they're great. Like him bragging about how he's just going to tax the hell out of you. You know, it's like he's nuts. And so I've been trying to cover him and Karen Bass, but I'll check out Dean Preston as well. That's a good one.
How the elites insulate themselves from the media now is insane. Like when you compare how Trump would just talk to, that was one thing. Trump, he would go head to head with anyone. You never hear any journalist ask Newsom, Kathy Hochul, this chick that we're playing right here, Gretchen Whitmer, any of these high-level Democrats, you never see them get hardballed, ever. They always, especially Newsom. And Newsom has his, I don't want to talk too much shit on him, but Alex with the E. He's become like his personal journalist. And he does interviews with them and stuff. But everything's just, you could tell that Gavin knows every single question that's coming. Even the ones that seem kind of hard and challenging, it's like, okay, well, Gavin, we got to ask you something that, like, you know, kind of looks tough. So, like, you know, everything's just so queued up. Yeah, they never get asked tough questions, and how they can insulate themselves from ever having to answer to us. That's one of my biggest issues. Is they never have to answer to us. They're never asked tough questions, like at the federal level too, like Karine Jean-Pierre and Kirby, Kirby and Karine Jean-Pierre, how they just like blame, like, well, you'll have to ask that person over there, and then they get up on stage and it's like, well, you'll have to ask that person over there what their stance. It's the whole go ask your dad thing. No, well, go ask your mom. It's annoying.
Yeah, we that's why I like in the documentary films to really try and hold people accountable for what they said in the past so that they can't pull off revisionist history. Like one of our favorite parts of American history of voter fraud is we go over the Democrats complaining about election fraud, 2000, 2004, you know, et cetera. And then, you know, even Amy Klobuchar, you know, and all them between 2016 on the way to, you know, 2020, they were complaining about voter fraud. And then at some point they got the message like, no, we're going to do the voter fraud. Say it doesn't exist now, you know? So it is funny how it flips so easily. Like my favorite clip is like Keith Olbermann doing all the things that the MAGA people did in 2020, complaining about voter fraud and how there's a media blackout discussing it, and you know how you can't really trust the machines and the mail-in ballots and the absentees, you know, all the things that most people go over after a rigged election allegedly. And then they of course like, oh, it doesn't exist, most secure election ever, all that crap. So that's why we like to, you know, hold them accountable.
Well, aside from that too, like what was Hillary's biggest thing with the Russia and Trump thing? What did she allege that Russia and Trump did together? How did they steal the 2016 election?
This is I'm glad we were going to go over this. Yeah, this is as crazy as it gets. She just randomly said that a foreign country interfered with our election and then colluded with the opponent to make him win.
But right? How? But how? By what mechanism did they do that?
I believe she started to say like, I believe initially it was actually like, oh, they hacked into the machines, and then they got kind of caught for how bullshit that was. And then I think eventually they backed off to, well, they ran terrible Facebook ads and they may have influenced the vote, but I do think there was an initial, like, they messed with the machines and you can't trust the machines.
Right, but that narrative got thrown out the window. The whole narrative for 4 years of Russia collusion with Trump, that whole thing all comes back to it was a massive meme campaign on Facebook by tons of different Russian troll bots to influence. It wasn't to steal anything. It was to spread influence, right? So they allege all this happens, and then it obviously didn't, right? That's all proven. And then, so they say that there was this massive campaign with memes and Facebook just to influence the election. Then it didn't happen. And then it comes out after the 2020 election that the CIA, FBI, NSA, the whole Department of Homeland Security could just straight up email people at Twitter and say, I want this account with 204 followers taken down because he said Hillary Clinton is a pee-pee poo-poo face. Like, that was the level of control they had over influence and information. The Hunter Biden laptop story, like the suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop story and the suppression of COVID information too, the suppression of vaccine information, that had an influence on the election. But the Hunter Biden laptop story alone is way bigger of a deal than anything Hillary ever alleged Trump did with Russia. That laptop alone, with the 51 former, CIA agents coming out and saying, "Yep, that's Russia collusion," or that too. They called that Russian misinformation, and all of it ends up being lies. And the suppression of the laptop was a bigger influence on the election than any sort of crazy meme campaign on Facebook would have been in 2016.
Yes. I think it's a excellent analogy. I loved how you put that. And it's like in 2016, as Hillary Clinton is alleging foreign interference and this influence peddling and the changing of minds. In reality, in 2020, when they suppressed the Hunter Biden laptop story, that truly did influence a lot of minds and change votes. So I loved how you put that, because it's a direct line from one to the other.
But then they try to play it down like it was nothing,
Yeah.
Like, it's just, so it's like, not only did it influence the election, the stuff contained within that laptop, could, like, wait, what? All the stuff that we found out, just, it wasn't just that it influenced the election. It's like, those are crimes as well,
and it's tough to describe, but it's like, so American History of Voter Fraud, we describe all the actual mechanisms of how they manipulate, like, mail-in ballots to rig an election. But in the trial of Anthony Fauci, we show you how he manipulated the emergency use authorization and the state of public emergency that was declared, and was able to extend that by denying adequate alternative and available treatments like hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, and then was trying to push terrible treatments that were worse than the disease, like remdesivir and ventilators and the vaccine eventually. And so this is like, he was able to extend that emergency use authorization and the public health emergency bullshit crisis so that they could justify the mail-in ballot election. And that the way those are intertwined is really tough to describe to people. It took us 2 films to do it.
I told you that I was dating a respiratory therapist during the first wave, right?
That's hot.
No, it was not. Well, okay, yeah. We won't go there. But, like, what the respiratory therapists do, right? They're the ones that intubate, the ones that put the people on the ventilators.
Oh, so she's like Dr. Kevorkian.
They're even referred to as like the angels of death, because when they talk about pulling the plug, they're the ones that do it. They're the ones that take people off the breathing machine.
Yeah.
No, she's like, and that was actually something that was very, I don't want to talk too much crap about it. Actually, that was something that was very uncomfortable about her, is how, like,
your ex killed people. Don't dance around it, damn it.
Technically, yeah, but it was strange how how like comfortable with death that she was. She was very desensitized to it. It was very strange. But the thing that she told me that really like blew my mind was she was like, yeah, tons of patients died because nurses were not putting people on ventilators, but cranking the ventilators up way too high. Like respiratory therapists know a lot more. Like that's all they do is they're trained on that machine, you know?
Well,
like
in general, so just for the response to COVID and, you know, and even just, you know, the range of, you know, diseases in that area. Cause again, they could, if an honest doctor would tell you that we can't tell you for sure if this is COVID, flu, coronavirus, adenovirus, etc. We think we know it's just a range of symptoms. But in the end, they knew that ventilators were harming those patients as early as May 1st, 2020, we found from FOIA and Fauci emails. Yet publicly, he was saying more ventilators, more ventilators. That's how Fauci was rolling publicly. But privately, he was emailing saying, yeah, these ventilators suck. They aren't helping at all.
Something that Dr. Mary Talley Bowden pointed out when she was on here was that COVID was very different. She was saying once your oxygen levels drop below a certain level, you're supposed to be intubated. Like that's the rule kind of thing. Like once your O2 levels are below, I can't remember what that level was, but she says once it drops below a certain level, you're supposed to be intubated. She's like, well, you know, since she was running her practice and people were terrified to go to the hospital, she was like, she started seeing regular patients, almost like she was a primary care physician. She's not. She's a specialist. She's an ear, nose, and throat specialist. She doesn't have a primary, you know, she's not a primary care physician. But she started basically being one because hospitals were being such freaking crazy nutbags. So she was talking about how one guy came in with the oxygen level of 86, which I guess is insanely low, like crazy low, should have been intubated a long time ago. She was like, but somehow this guy was still kicking. And, you know, she was like, we put him on the regimen, the alternative stuff, because he wasn't going to take the vaccine. She's like, they threw the whole thing at him. They did the whole kit that they had: zinc, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, azithromycin. And she was talking about how like they combined all those things because all these different doctors started using alternative treatments. Like one guy over here was using zinc, one guy over here was using ivermectin, one guy over here was using hydroxychloroquine. Well, then they put them all together in a kit. It was like nobody's died from COVID when they put them on this kit. Like everybody pulled through, you know, and this kit's super effective. Meanwhile, you can't have an emergency use authorization if there's an effective treatment. So all this stuff's demonized. Yeah, it was just, she was super red pilled by this whole thing. She's just, you know, she's watching it, and how more doctors weren't red pilled like she was, and how there wasn't more whistleblowers. And it's really shocking, you know, and I'm wondering how many.
It shows you how many people chose money over people.
I don't think it was so much that, man. I think it's a cognitive dissonance and a trained to be a yes, sir, no, sir, follow the rules, you know, like medical school now is, you know, I obviously haven't gone through medical school, but apparently it's just like, you're not taught to be a doctor anymore. Like somebody that diagnoses people, you know, it's like cookie cutter rules and prescribe people this.
You know, I hear you, and I think that's a totally valid argument. But we're also simultaneously saying some of the most brilliant people and most educated people also couldn't see what was going on. I think that's that's quite a convenient cop out for them. I think. I
don't know, man. Because like, think. All right, put yourself in these shoes. You're a doctor. And in the beginning, you do think it's safe and effective, right? Like you think this vaccine, there's no way the medical community could do the things that we're saying they did. And you've bought into the whole vaccines because you're a doctor, you've trained, you're a new doctor, 5 years, whatever. And you know, you've been trained to trust these vaccines and all this stuff. This stuff comes out, and then you prescribe or you recommend these vaccines to people. You take them yourself, you give them to your kids. Well, now there's this like, if I'm wrong about this, look what I've done type thing. So there's this cognitive dissonance where people have to convince themselves that they did the right thing. I really think there's a lot of that going on.
Well, and again, I think that's the very kind way to put it, because again, a lot of them were literally, oh, I get this much if I get 10 people vaccinated, 20, 30, 40, 50. And there's a document showing you this of like, oh, and it's like, it's a little reimbursement program of how many people you can get vaccinated. So I think it's more that they're checking their direct deposit and the direct deposit hit, and they're like, I don't care that much. And I think a lot of them really chose money and their lifestyle over people. And I think it's, unfortunately, a lot of doctors do look that way. I think the Mary Tally Bowdens of the world are unfortunately, they're trying to be pushed out of the system because those are the last people that could actually hold doctors accountable. They're the ones smart enough to even understand what is going on and to be able to be that check and balance. Once those people are removed from the system because, you can't make money and have a practice and have your medical license without adhering to our guidelines, then they can do whatever the hell they want. And that's the biggest worry. And she is literally the last line of defense for us, those type of people, or else we're not going to have any advocate in the medical world. They'll just do what they want. It's whatever the stockholders say.
Yeah, I'm not highly encouraged for the future of the medical establishment. Well, all right, man. I think that's a good time to wrap it there. Any upcoming things for you that people should know about?
Nothing in particular. I do a version of this show on my channel, Immune to the System, so check that out on Rumble. Do we have time to do the other history clip, or do you have a hard out?
I have a hard out at 90 minutes. That sounded a little.
No, that's good. Okay, so you have a hard out. So lilahart.com/documentary. Check out all my films. Really appreciate it. And yeah, we're gonna get Mayor Wu recalled. Don't you worry, guys. I have more stuff. Don't worry.
We can go later. The next one. We'll talk about the length, but yeah, I have to do 90 minutes tonight.
No problem.
Right. All right. So yeah, where else can people find you on the interwebs?
My wife's YouTube page, Love Lila Hart. Go check that out. lilahart.com/documentary. Hit both of those.
All right. Cool, folks.
This was fun, Michael. Really appreciate it.
Well, yeah, I hope we do it again next Sunday. So yeah, we'll talk offline and we'll figure out a format and stuff like that. But folks, I will be back here tomorrow night at 6:30 with my guest Ashton Forbes. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the MH. What is it? The MH Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 situation. Ashton was just on Timcast Cultures War podcast on Friday, talking all about it. You can go to his X platform. You can see tons of his videos that are on there. But this is going to be a very interesting one, folks. This is going to be a different episode. This is going to be more of a deep dive, and we're going down the sci-fi conspiracy I want to believe rabbit hole tomorrow night. So that'll be fun. So I hope you guys come check it out. If you guys want to contribute to the show, it is always greatly appreciated. There are links in the show notes here. You can tap the link in my bio. That's a good way to contribute. Like, share, subscribe. You could also go to oxford2024.com if you want to support my campaign. All right, Eric, you got actually, I'm going to say bye to the chat here. So Whiskey Reaper, Casey Martin.
Thank you to all the people who said they're going to check out the films. Really appreciate it. Danger, Wally, etc. Really.
Where can they find those films? They all on Lila's
lilahart.com or my Twitter, and they're all there. At Lila's YouTube though, please subscribe. Would love that.
All right, cool. Danger in the chat. That's one of my good buddies. He's been friends for like 20 years. No joke.
Appreciate you guys.
Wally World, Danger, Michael Letter, let's see, CC Pino, Whiskey Martin, Whiskey Reaper. I got two names mixed up right there. Whiskey Reaper, Casey Martin, Humboldt Surfer, Northside, Terry Wallace, In God's Hands. Thank you guys all for joining in. You got a joke? I'm gonna put you on the spot. You got a joke for us?
I don't think my parents like me that much. The last time they enjoyed me was when they came.
That was awful. All right, folks. We'll see you next Sunday. Thanks for hanging out.